All right, welcome to the A's Philosophy YouTube channel. I am A's Philosophy, and this is the after show for the debate between objective ethics and Ray. And this is an opportunity for others to join the conversation and give their thoughts and ask questions. We're going to go for maybe hour, hour and a half, up to 2 hours max, absolute maximum. But remember, the idea let's just keep things civil. No cursing, please. No attacking others. No yelling. No over talking. All those things. We're all adults here. Hopefully, we can manage that. But yeah, just go. You guys just go ahead and we only have 5 now. We have room for 6. So if someone else wants to join, or we can look at what's going on in the chat. But yeah, go ahead. Whoever wants to start.
I'll start if y'all want me to.
Yeah, go ahead, Johnny. Yeah, lead the way.
So to me, it seems like Ray is trying to basically assert that what the Bible says, what God says, basically is what's moral. My problem with that is that if that's your position, then you have to admit that killing infants is moral when God does it, and you have to also say that slavery is good because God condoned it. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's a bad thing. So it seems like even within a lot of Christians' worldview, they'll admit that slavery is wrong, but that it's okay when God does it. And I don't think I think it's a bad position to have.
Yeah, fully agree on that.
Wait, who said that?
I was going to answer to your objection to my position, but I can also wait for someone else because they said they agreed with you.
I was confused because I was like, "That's not your voice. Who's that?"
No, sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice sounds a little different
No,
than
you're
usual.
fine, though.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I agree with that, and it's why my position is I find Christianity frightening, because essentially your ethics just sort of hinge on what the biggest guy says, and that's something that can very easily be used to say that doing something horrible like killing infants is fine.
Yeah, 1 Samuel 15.
Yeah, that's a favorite.
God has the Amalekites genocided for something that the current Amalekites didn't even do. This was 400 years in the past, meaning the current Amalekites were innocent of that crime that they were killed for. And what could the infants have done? The infants didn't do anything. And then, at that point, the apologetic I hear the most is like, and I don't know if this is Ray's position, but this is just what I have heard is that, well, they get to go to heaven, so it's fine, right? Like, but
yeah, I think
like if I punched you in the face but gave you if I punched you in the face so many times that your nose broke, but then I gave you $10, then I gave you like $10,000 after, does that make it okay that I hit you?
Before you answer, Ray, Nathaniel, are you there? It seems like you might be having some technical, so I just wanted to see if you're there or not.
I think I'm here.
Okay, I think maybe the camera, for some reason, when you bring your camera on, that's what causes the issue. All right, but I can hear you fine now, so it seems like it's just going to deal with it this way. But all right, whoever wants to respond to that can go ahead.
I want to respond to that, but you can first.
I'll let you guys go. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just say something that still sort of stuck with me a while later. My first sort of experience with apologetics was a clip of William Lane Craig talking about the Amalekite slaughter. And to just see this guy saying, with this warm smile on his face, that it was actually a tremendous blessing that all these children were brutally murdered because they get to go up to heaven. And to just illustrate, from an outsider who doesn't think that heaven's real, that thinks that this is all just sort of mythological, basically. And to see Christians just have such little regard for the mortal life is a big thing that I find just very unsettling about Christianity.
Yes, I find it very unsettling that, because when people believe in something like that, when they believe that there is a being out there, and then they have all these things that they think comes from this being, then that leads the way for some horrible things to happen, because they're willing to justify it by saying, well, my God says it's okay, so I can do it. It's fine. It's no problem with it. That's the justification the early like Southern Baptist Church used to condone slavery, is by saying, well, Leviticus 25 and Exodus 21 say it's okay.
All right, so yeah, the question is put forward about the immoral acts of God. Nathaniel said he wanted to go first, and maybe Ray also has some ideas. So Nathaniel, why don't you kind of give your answer, and then Ray, also you as well.
Oh, is it going to be more regulated? I thought it'd be.
It's not. I'm just trying to direct the conversation a little bit. Yeah,
Sure.
I want to try to eliminate like crosstalk. So sometimes I'll call people out if they want to. You can yield the time to someone else if you want, but you said you had something you wanted to say, so I thought I would call on you first.
Yeah, I was talking to Objective Ethics about this, and I think it's perfectly legitimate if you believe, like if you understand Christianity as being fully explained by the Bible, to then go and look at these actions, described in the Bible, and go to that for like your criticism of the religion. What I always, and I honestly think it's not that interesting to talk about, because like everyone knows the apologetics and the arguments and stuff, and there's very few people who are going to show up that haven't already heard it and made their decision. So we all kind of approach the Bible having already picked what we believe, and once you pick what you believe, then you can look at the Bible, atheist or agnostic or whatever, Catholic, I'm a Catholic, and then you can modify your beliefs. But like most people have already gone into a camp. So what I always wonder is, like, why can't we talk about, coming out here, like really like trying to be genuine, sincere men talking together, taking each other seriously? Why look at a slaughter of Amalekites when the claim that Christians are making is that God is all powerful, and so he is, at least indirectly, and you'd have to explain how indirectly, responsible for every evil thing that happens and can answer for all of it. And there are so many things we could see in front of us, and then you want to factor in media, we're aware of other things that we have a much better understanding of, and we see all the circumstances around it, or at least we believe we do. Like, I mean, we could talk about slavery in America. We could talk about slavery right now in economics. That's a common thing I meditate on. We could talk about Palestine and Israel. We could talk about Ukraine and Russia. I think those things are probably so controversial that personally I don't think you can really trust the media on that. But I mean, I can look at my own family. I can look at things I see every day and see drastic suffering and or just evil things that happen. And that would be way more legitimate to talk about, because it's like, I think it makes more sense. I think that's what makes a person an atheist. That's what makes a person a Christian. It's like, well, my mother abused me when I was a child, and I fell into this, and I witnessed a murder, or this kind of thing. And so you Christian man, explain to me why my loved ones have suffered. That's a much more legitimate question.
Well, yeah, that is. The problem of evil is a big problem within Christianity, because they believe in a tri-omni God, which is the all-good, all-knowing, and all-powerful being. And then you have to wonder how an all-good, all-knowing, and all-powerful being lets horrible things happen that don't actually really serve a purpose. I mean...
Yeah, and it certainly would not make any sense without heaven. So then it makes sense to talk about heaven.
Well, no,
but
even
let me just, if I can really quick jump in here. I haven't spoken yet. I'd just like to just touch on something here. What's been brought up by the skeptics, and I echo exactly what they're saying. Take the Bible, set it aside for it. You're wanting to pull everybody back into the text, but I'm saying let's just set this aside for a second. And what are we really talking about? Because it's a bit of a straw man actually talking about. What we're talking about is the effects of what happens, and it's not just what can happen, but we've actually seen happen throughout the course of history, is that people use this text to justify terrible, terrible things against humanity. And that's the problem that the skeptics have, is we don't have to go into the text because we don't believe there's any validity to the text. Now, if your paradigm says that this God is real, the skeptic would say, listen, I will address how we're going to approach that once you demonstrate this God is real. Because until you make that huge leap, and it is a huge leap, then all the skeptic is left with is observation of the behavior itself. And what the behavior says is you're using this as a tool to justify horrific things. And so that's, I think, what the skeptics here, what the brothers are talking about, and I echo that as well. And we can do an exegesis of the text itself and an internal critique, and we could all argue about how that falls apart when you start looking at like the things we talked about in the debate, where you're saying, well, it's okay for God to kill babies, but it's not okay for people to, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is the harm that comes from having what you're going to assign an authority to that is not actually a demonstrable authority, because you can literally justify anything at that point. And every cultures have throughout the entire history of the world.
Yes.
I agree. The Quran, for example, the Quran has been used to justify like underage marriage for years now. In fact, in Iraq, they just lowered the age to like 9, I believe, for marriage, using the Quran, because they were using the Quran.
I'd also like to address two assumptions you made about us during your response there. One of them is the fact that you essentially said that we choose what we believe and then go into everything looking for something that justifies that belief. I don't think belief is a choice. You're either convinced or you're not. Also, you seem to say that anyone who doesn't believe must just be essentially angry at God. Something bad happened to me. There clearly isn't anyone looking out for me, therefore God isn't real. I'm not an atheist because something bad happened to me. I'm an atheist because it just frankly makes zero sense to me, and I've yet to see any evidence that points to this God or any other God being real.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're just reading the book. Like it's a contradictory God, and contradictions can't exist. Like you can't be logical contradictions can't exist. You can't be a married bachelor. You can either be married or a bachelor. You can't be both. So likewise, a being cannot be all powerful and also not all powerful. Like you can't be all powerful and then be stopped by freaking iron chariots. And you can't be all knowing, but then need to come down to see what's going on. And the Bible gives both of these examples.
Okay.
So it's self-contradictory.
That's fine. I think you misunderstood me, but that's okay. I would love to hear, because the things that you're criticizing, I love their A's. That's what I was going to say.
I have some responses to a lot of what they're saying already. So as far as the Amalekites, so let's be clear that God is not. That was something that happened, but it's not something that's prescribed for us to do. So Christians aren't, commanded to go out and basically harm children. Actually, if you read Jesus in 18:6, he says that anyone who harms children, it's better that a millstone be hung around his neck and drowned in the depth of the sea. Mm-hmm. So Christians are actually commanded to treat children with great kindness and respect. And it says Jesus has a lot of very great things to say about children and their place, how much God loves them, and how serious the punishment is for harming children. So we have to, but if you want to go to these specific examples, I think if you're going to take the Bible at face value, basically these were corrupt cultures. You have the Noah's flood. The text itself says that every heart, again, if we're, I know you don't believe the Bible, but if we're taking it at face value, it says that these people were evil and they were dwelling in evil. And presumably God would know that the children would eventually become evil. Okay. So at that point we have to ask, is God justified in,
no.
So let me ask you, this is a question I asked Objective Ethics in one of our previous discussions. Let's just say that you have baby Hitler in front of you.
Okay.
If you don't kill him, he's going to grow up and murder millions of people. If you do kill him, you will save all of their lives and you will have taken a very evil person off the earth. What do you do, Johnny?
If I'm an all-powerful being, if I'm an all-powerful being, then I would find a way to make sure they didn't turn out that way.
That's not the question. An all-powerful being, there are basically, even an all-powerful being, there are limitations on basically the code of operation. Okay, God cannot stop being God. God cannot make 2 + 2 = 5. God cannot, give us free will and also limit
But he's
it.
also
He takes it away all the time.
Yeah, he takes people's free will all the time.
Yeah, God hardened the heart of Pharaoh and actually led the pharaohs who chased the quote unquote alleged slaves out of Egypt, and he drowned all those people after he hardened Pharaoh's heart. I mean, God interacts with free will all the time in the Bible. And as far as Jesus goes, Jesus specifically, as I mentioned in the debate, condemns the Pharisees for not following the Mosaic law regarding unruly children. And if you have a reference Bible, it'll give you a reference to that happened in Mark chapter 7, verse 10. And it takes you to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 9, and what it says to do with unruly children is to stone them. So Jesus, it's this internal contradiction is there that Johnny was talking about, and he said it absolutely correctly. Well, you can't say I love the children and then you stone unruly children. That just doesn't comport. It's a contradiction.
Well, obviously, again, I think let's just, when we're defining unruly, let's just say, go ahead. Whoever, I don't know who.
I want to ask do you all believe in free will, and how would you define it? Because you got very worked up on that topic, all three of you.
For me, the simple answer is I don't know.
Well, I got worked up because it's a blatant contradiction. You say that God can't take people's free will when the stories have him constantly take free will.
It's not a blatant contradiction.
Can I answer the question?
All right, hey.
Sure.
Actually, I do want to say it's not a bad question, but let's there are Bible verses which seem to indicate God at times intervenes in people's free will.
Exactly.
Let's put that aside for right now. Let's just say God has created humans with free will.
Let's just throw out the parts of the Bible we don't agree with.
Okay. For the most part, God is clearly giving people a choice to either be good or evil. Okay, there may be a handful of maybe. I'm not giving it to you, but let's just say a couple times in history God intervened for whatever reason. That there are many. It's overwhelmed by the evidence that God is allowing people to choose good or evil. Okay, so that's how God has created things.
It's also very consistent. When you have a will, you're making decisions over time, and they get locked in. Like the angels made one decision; they'd either rebel against God or they'd follow God, and that is now their will. They cannot change their will. Pharaoh is that same example. He was already doing this thing. Anytime that you sin, it's a natural effect that you continue sinning. You become less capable of resisting your own desires that are below your will because you've given them reign over it. And so it's not inconsistent. It's part of law. So Pharaoh made the willful decision. When God hardened his heart, he just allowed the natural effect of that. It was still his decision. The question is whether or not God assists somebody in changing their will, because humans are distinct in being able to change their will over time. But eventually they will be locked into their will in heaven or hell, and it won't change anymore.
And really, y'all, I hear this answer all the time. Y'all are sidestepping the point of the conversation, which is God justified in basically commanding the slaughter? And what I'm trying to say to you if you take the Bible at face value that these people were evil, you are avoiding the solution, which is to say, well, I would figure out another way. Okay, that's not the thing. These people are going to be evil according to the Bible. You have baby Hitler in front of you. Mm-hmm. You're not God. Are you justified? Are you answer the question? Are you justified in killing baby Hitler or not?
I just
want to hear you that. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, to take it back to the Amalekite one, let's say you go in there, you slaughter just the adults, take the kids with you, teach them to be better. Like, it's not that.
That's not the hypothetical. The hypothetical is, according to God, these people.
Well, it's a hypothetical to talk about that specific thing. So I'd rather talk about the specific thing directly rather than this.
Yeah, according to God, God knows that these people are going to grow up and use their free will to be evil, just like Hitler did. I wanted to know. You have baby Hitler's. He's a little infant. He can't defend himself. You have a knife in your hand. There's no one around. He won't get punished. He's going to grow up and kill millions of people if you don't take him out right there. God, you've been informed by divine revelation what's going to happen. What are you going to do? Are you going to let Hitler live, or are you going to and murder millions of people, or are you going to basically do something else? What are you going to do?
Frankly, I don't know.
You don't know. So you don't know if you would take Hitler out and save millions of people, or if you would just kill one person who's going to be evil. You don't know what you would do?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, God has seen it fit that if we can,
Well, he's
basically,
all-knowing, so he can't say that.
right, exactly, exactly. So the premise is what's going to happen. God has given you that information, just like God knows what will happen with these people. The point is, if we're, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if God, having foreknowledge of what's going to happen, knows that these people are going to be evil, it is justified to basically eliminate them and remove them based on that knowledge, not based on preferences or feelings or I think this is that or right. No, God knows what's going to happen. That's the premise. And yes, God is justified in eliminating evil people from the world. There's nothing wrong with that.
I
We
wouldn't
do
say
that
so,
all the time.
especially because the main reason the Amalekites were killed isn't just because they were bad people, evil people. It's because of an attack they launched 400 years prior. That's the main reason. So that means that the people who were killed when it happened were innocent of the crime they were being killed for. They didn't do it. They weren't. All those people were already gone.
What would be-
Right. So in order for this analogy to actually comport directly to the example we're talking about, you would have to be talking about Hitler's distant, far distant future baby. It's saying, well, we're going to kill your baby 500 years in the future. Is that good or bad or whatever? It just doesn't. The analogies break down like every analogous relationship does. And just to point out that the brother Nathaniel, when you said that this is about Pharaoh being a sinner previously, no. The text specifically says, chapter 7 verse 3, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my miraculous signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Now you got to think about that and take that into context. Okay, the atheist, I don't think there's an atheist or agnostic that says if God actually came down and started turning staffs into snakes right in front of me, then I'm going to reject God. I'm even hard atheists would not be like, oh, you know what, I don't believe in you. That's just not going to happen. But the problem then becomes, am I going to worship this God or not? That's a whole separate question.
All right, let me ask you this.
Here's Pharaoh, who's literally being shown all these miraculous signs, and he's literally not. God says he will not, because I will not let him. I am hardening his heart against the truth. It is against his will.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, there is anthropomorphizing. There's certainly language in the Bible. There are translation issues. It's certainly, I can agree that but to me, my basic premise is that God has established the laws of the universe. There are the natural laws, the physical laws, and that the laws that govern human agency, which is that we have free will. They are inviolate. Okay, and if there are some Bible verses that contradict that, okay, maybe it's the wording, maybe it's just a textual error. I don't know, but I don't accept it either way. So I will just admit that.
Oh, so we or what it says then.
If you go, I mean, we can have that debate about, but I will also say that if God does, at some cases, limit our free will, it seems to me that the standard operating procedure is that humans have free will and we are capable of doing evil things or good things, in my opinion. And look, there are sects of Christianity that will say humans don't have free will, but for me, my answer is that those people are wrong. Humans do have free will. That's our direct observation, and I believe that the preponderance of the evidence supports that. I just want to ask you: are Christians commanded to do evil things now? I'm not asking if God said that people should do bad things in the past. Is there something you can point to in the Bible right now that, or in the teachings of Christ or the prophets or God's revelation that suggests that Christians should do things that you think are evil?
Well, where does Jesus ever condemn slavery?
I don't think he
Can
does.
I answer this, please?
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't condemn.
But listen, Johnny, is owning a slave loving? Is it loving your neighbor?
Jesus tells people to execute people that don't love him.
Where does he say that?
1 second, let me re-Google it. Somewhere in Luke.
Yeah, I mean, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible tells you can own slaves, and Jesus never at any point ever says,
Luke 19:27.
we're done with that.
18:27. Okay, I mean you might be right, but
and so
Jesus, and I know the apologetic is going to be that it's part of the parable, but
it just seems like
it's not,
they all want to.
Yeah, and to that I say, so
through
what?
the list of things.
Okay,
still saying it.
Okay, people who break God's law are going to hell. Okay, so we can argue about what God's law is at this point. Is it to love God and love your neighbor?
No, it's the Mosaic law.
Okay, the part of that is, but how did Jesus summarize that in Matthew 22?
Doesn't matter. Not one jot or tittle.
So actually, let me just read this for you, just so you're aware.
I just really don't know why so you guys have an interpretation of the Bible.
Who's speaking?
No, I just read the
This is
text.
me. Okay, you guys have an interpretation of the Bible because, for example,
No, I just read the text.
Nathaniel, can I want to finish
fine.
my train of thought. I want to finish my train of thought.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I want to get to Jesus's words. So I'm asking them if Jesus commands us to do something evil. They said Jesus commands us to kill people. Okay, we turned that. We find out it's a parable. Here's what Jesus commanded us. Okay, a lawyer asked him a question, teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said, you will love the God with all your heart, mind, and soul. This is the greatest commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments, this 2240, depend the whole law and prophets. So loving your neighbor and yourself is the whole summary of the law and prophets. So that would not include savory. So I would say
that's not true. No, that's not true. And I don't have the verse pulled up in front of me, but so I can either do some digging here. But I will tell you, brother, that the law that Jesus is referring to, love your neighbor as yourself, that's actually in the Mosaic law.
Yeah.
The same part that gives the law. Right after that, he tells you how to own slaves. Literally, it's in the same book.
Yeah. So yes.
He also says, "Slaves, obey your masters."
Yeah. So the law Jesus is referring to is the Mosaic law. He says these are two laws, and upon them rest all of the other laws. And so he's also implying that the part about slavery either applies to love your God or love your neighbor. So he's talking about
it's not a sin to own a slave. It's not.
No, you're right. It's not a sin to own a slave.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Which is messed up, isn't it? Like,
sure. So
do you want me to?
That's my point. Is you guys have your own morality and your own interpretation of the Bible. It's totally antithetical to the whole Christian understanding of the world. So what's your point?
Yes.
Do you just want to talk about how bad Christian thing is?
No,
why do you have to come here?
No, we were talking about the what I was asked is basically what I was asked is what negative things come out of the Bible. Well, the Bible condones slavery, and never does Jesus tell you that you can't.
No, he said does Jesus teach or Christians taught to do evil?
No,
things?
before that.
And then you said slavery, and slavery is not a sin.
No, before that,
natural evil to own a slave is not to do an evil thing.
I
don't know. You guys talked a lot, and it seemed like you said.
I want to disagree. I do think slavery is inherently evil, and it's not something we should do or we're commanded to do. So I just want to put my thoughts out there on that.
You're just given explicit instructions on how to do it, but it's definitely wrong to do it.
Well, see, that's fine. That's why.
Yeah. You can beat your slave to death as long as they suffer from their injuries for a few days.
I personally take a very different approach to the Bible than most Christians, which I think solves this problem.
Now, the one true Christian, we finally found him.
Well, do you want to hear my point, or just want to launch attacks?
Sure, it's just frustrating to hear that every time.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating to hear someone say, "This is my perspective." Okay, this is what I'm trying to give you as an answer. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, you can go somewhere else. All right.
Can I ask objective a question?
Hold on. Let me finish this. Okay. So we're asking this whole thing. Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount on Matthew 5:38. Okay. He says, you have heard it said that eye for an eye, for a tooth for a tooth. That comes from Exodus chapter 21, verse 24. And then Jesus says in the next verse 39, but I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right turn to you. So it does appear that Jesus teaches in somewhat distinction to the direct language of the original Mosaic law, which is an interesting conversation to have, and I've had it a number of times. But I will say, just because something appears explicitly in the original Mosaic law does not necessarily mean that Jesus says we should have to obey it. So that's my personal take on the question.
And that's another.
Well, that's just contradictory to when Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, not one jot or tittle of the law will change until heaven and earth come to pass."
Right.
And anyone who teaches different will be considered least in the kingdom of heaven.
Right, and he's right. But the problem is, what is Jesus's conceptualization of the law? Is it exactly the law as it's written? I don't think so.
Is he not all-knowing?
That's what he does know what the law is, but in my opinion, he probably has a different idea of the law than what is encoded. And we see evidence of this in I think it's Jeremiah 8:8, the lying hand of the scribe. So it does seem very clear to me. Again, I know this is not going to be the answer a lot of Christians give you, But I will say to you that Jesus's teachings do seem to diverge from the plain text of the original Mosaic law. Now, the contradiction, there actually is no contradiction if you just realize that when Jesus is talking about the law, I don't see any place that he says the law as it's currently recorded for us. So you can, answer that. You can say, point problems with that, but that's kind of how I look at it.
So everyone has to follow a law that they don't know?
Well, it's clarified in the teachings of Jesus. This is why Jesus is important, in my opinion, because he clarifies the law. So basically, the principle is love God and love your neighbor. Obviously, atheists don't believe in God, so they can't love God. And that's not a criticism. That's just a fact. But basically, the point is, the law is we must do what is loving. So if there is something...
I disagree with that about atheists. I think they can love God because God is truth. So a lot of atheists are.
No, I would disagree with that definition.
Yeah, no, stop.
Strongly
Dude,
disagree with
you
that
know
definition
what?
of God.
You're right. I shouldn't talk because I know I'm not going to finish what I'm saying. Excuse me. I'm going to wait for you two to be done so I can talk to reasonable people. Objective ethics.
Wow, what the fuck?
Okay, fuck this. I'm out.
Bye, Sal.
All right.
That's
You
like
guys
the third
mind if
time
I
he
just,
interrupted me. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. And it's like.
All right.
I hate when people do
I did not want him to leave. I was hoping to have a conversation with him. Okay, so I just want to say I didn't boot him, and he's welcome back if he wants to come back. So
I'm sorry about that.
Sal, if you're still watching, come on back.
Yeah, but honestly, Nathaniel, like I said, let's please limit ad hominem attacks. We just don't need to go there right now. This is we all understand we're frustrated when we disagree over things, but let's just try
It's not that we disagree. It was the interruption that bothered me.
But I understand. People are going to interrupt you. That's the nature. Just try to deal with it as best you can. If it gets too bad, I'll try to moderate. But let's go forward. Just try to be, not, just be civil, polite as we can. All right, go ahead.
I'll do my best. I apologize.
I would.
Can I just offer some different interpretations on some of the things that have been discussed? I'm not trying to go into a whole.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Okay. Yeah. So what I want to do is at least bring up the fact that the text does say the Amalekites were sinners, and at the time, it's in 1 Samuel 15.
Okay, let's look at that. 1 Samuel 15. All right, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. So let's actually just get the facts and see what it actually says.
I want to point out.
Which verse is it, Ray?
Verse 18.
Verses 2 through 3. Verses 2 through 3.
I will punish it for what they did to Israel, how they set up against Egypt. Okay.
No. You need verse 18. They've already made that point, but
18.
that point doesn't stick fully because of verse 18 as well.
I'm reading 18 here, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, "Go and utterly destroy the sinners." So God is calling if we're going to take the Bible at face value, the Amalekites are sinners. So this is being proven right now. So I just wanted to set that. Yeah, go ahead.
I have but there's another point that would also be relevant because Sodom were wicked and sinners in Genesis 13, but they confederated with Abraham and they were successful in that. So the point is that God is not partial either in the fact that he is willing to give people a chance too. So like I had talked about in the debate, the Amorites, they did get conquested, but it was years later. And we are told they were doing very evil acts. So we do have to look at the whole situation. Like, for example, with Pharaoh, when Pharaoh repented, God relented off of Pharaoh. So Pharaoh understood he was wrong, and he upheld Jehovah, and God left off of Pharaoh. So it is important to take everything that's going on. Like Jesus didn't tell the Pharisees that they're guilty for not killing their children. He does mention the text, which Mr. Ethics brought up fairly, but it doesn't say that he was telling them to kill their children in that one either. It just says that this is what the word says, this is what the law says. If you curse your parents, you are to die. So the whole point is it would be like a teenager off doing this. And it is the law. So they were taught not to do those things. The Torah tells you to teach your children. And if your child grows up and is drunk, rebellious, they curse their parents, and they do die. So they were warned.
I just want to say, okay, so Selkuth, he left. Dirty Varmint, because unfortunately, due to the fact that I don't have a paid account, I'm limited to 6 people on. I'm only allowed to have 6 people on the panel at a time. And between the time Selkuth is trying to rejoin the channel, if someone leaves, I will allow him back on the panel. So I just want
You
to
asked
put
him
that
if
out
he
there.
wanted to come back. I told him you asked him to come back.
He will. Unfortunately, due to fairness, someone has replaced his spot. If someone leaves the panel, then he will be allowed to take the remaining spot. So, but out of fairness to the person who joined who joined in the meantime, I'm gonna have to ask him to wait until there's an open spot.
Can I
And if you don't mind, Ace, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick.
Yeah,
Thank
go ahead,
you. And thank you. And as far as the slavery that happened in this nation, the Old Testament teaches nothing of the sort. And I understand that's just a quick thing to say. I'd be more than happy to debate someone on that point. That it is crucial to understand that there were laws implemented for the rights of someone of this, what you call slaves. And that also refers to Christians. We are slaves to God. So it is a figure, it is a teaching as well that we live by. And we're real Christians. We do believe that if we sin, we're not just going to get to heaven or something. So we believe, real Christians believe you can lose your salvation and things like that. So these penalties are there in the text and they're warned of. So I'll have a debate with someone over the slavery thing. This slavery in this country was evil and is nothing like it was in the Bible.
But it is.
So it's interpretation.
Well, actually, Josh, I have referenced in our debate that Dr. Josh Bowen has addressed this issue in his book. That it's called "Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery?" Updated and expanded 2023. So this is not just something that angry atheists are saying because we hear the word slavery and we freak out. I'm an agnostic, for one thing, not an atheist. But it's not. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. This has been well studied. And I think, it's interesting to have a debate about it. I am not a historian, so I would have to really study up on the literature, but I'm going to consider the fact that actual historians who have studied up on the literature do also endorse that this is in fact chattel slavery. And then I map it to things that are talked about in the prescriptions for how to treat a slave, that you can actually beat them, and you can beat them to death as long as they don't die within the first 48 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, you can also see that you cannot beat them in the same way that you can beat your Israelite slaves. So there's no reason, I would think, even without being a historian, to think that there's any difference.
Yeah, it tells you.
Well, why were they given Sabbath rights?
Well, God did invent workman's comp for those slaves. If you beat them and they can't perform their duties afterwards, you have to give them workman's comp. So that's good, right?
What verse did you say? What chapter and verse is that?
The same one you're talking about. If you beat your slave and he's unable to perform his duties, you have to pay him. You can't just,
You're talking about the Israelite slave at that point? Because what I'm referencing is it's not about the Israelite slave. And that you're talking about you cannot beat them in the same way. Is that the one you're talking about? Because I'm talking about where you can beat them, and if they don't die within the first 48 hours, then you're fine. Which means that if they die after
the passage say that you have to pay them workman's comp?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Pretty sure it says you have to let them go if you. Pretty sure it says if they lose an eye, you have to let them go. But that's not really a punishment for them. That's not really a punishment though, because they should already be free in the first place. So saying, "Oh, they lost the eye because you got to let them go free," that's not really a punishment to you. That's just what.
And at that point, maiming somebody so badly that they can't even function as a slave, and then turning them loose into the desert. That's the one that Christians often say, "Well, it was so humane to take these people into slavery because they would have starved otherwise. I mean, if we just let them all go, they would just die in the desert." And I disagree with that. But if you're going to beat the hell out of them first, will you maim them so badly they can't even do their functions as a slave, and then let them go? Well, then, yeah, at that point, you might as well keep them around and feed them and give them shelter.
Yeah, Exodus 21 is very clear that you can beat them as long as they do not die within a few days. And if they lose an eye, for example, then you have to let them go. But it's fine if they die, like, after a few days, because it was presumed that it was an accident, and no vengeance will be taken upon you because they were your property to do that to. So I mean,
let me ask all this. I want to ask this proposition. Dirty Varmint, who's on the panel with us in the center of the D there. I think Jesus is telling us there are lies in the Bible, such as eye for an eye. That seems to be possibly an interpretation of Matthew 5:38 to 39. How would y'all feel about this? That if we just took the words of Jesus and assumed that Jesus disagrees with all the things that aren't consistent with God's actual law, how would y'all feel about that as a solution to the problems you're posing?
Well, Jesus
No,
lies.
I would say
So,
the thing we should look at is we should look at somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, who actually taught how to resolve your conflicts using actual pacifism without a single institution of violence whatsoever. That's what I think we should do. And he was a Hindu. I also think we should look into Buddhism, which teaches nonviolence. It's the fifth, or it's actually the really considered to be. Let me see. I think it's the first and most important precept, which teaches about nonviolence and not harming a single living being. I mean, you want to talk about being morally justified in every situation. These are far better than what you get in the New Testament, in the red letters of the New Testament.
You didn't answer
Actually,
the question.
yeah, that wasn't answering the question. And
I have
you
an
have to
answer.
understand if
can I answer the question?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I think that so if what he's saying is that Jesus is trying to say that there's lies in the Bible, why should I trust that Jesus is trying to say that? Because Jesus also lies a few times. He says things that are just not true. Now, whether they were intentional lies or whether he was just mistaken, who knows? But he still said things that were untrue. He
Like
says,
what?
I think it's in John. I could be wrong.
Yeah, John's alive. Throw it out.
I don't agree with that. But he says, because at that point you're just saying, well, I don't agree with it, so throw it out. But Jesus says that no one has ascended into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. He's talking about himself. The problem, both Elijah and Enoch both ascended into heaven in the Hebrew Bible. So that's just not true. He's just saying he's straight up mistaken.
Right. In Mark, Jesus says that Abraham ascended into heaven. So, John must be a lie and must be wrong. You have to throw it out.
Contradictions.
I mean, if there's contradictions between Mark and John, you have to pick one. And since John doesn't have the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, it's only got one witness. Most of John is unique to John. So you have to throw John out, according to...
Well, I agree with you that John is completely unique and is a completely different theology and is contradictory. However, you've left out the third and most reasonable option, which is to simply reject them both.
That's not reasonable.
Say it again, objective. You cut out.
So hold on.
You said that John is contradictory to the excuse me about that, gentlemen. Sorry about that. John is contradictory to the Gospels, the Synoptics, and I agree with him 100%. I know a lot of Christians would not agree with that, but I think he's absolutely right. I think it's quite clear that John is his own theology. However, he's the only 2 options of picking either John or the Synoptics, and I say there's a third option that's better, is to just toss them both out. You don't have to pick either one. Toss them both.
Let me ask you about that. And sorry to interrupt. I know I'm jumping down your throat there, but I really want to get this out. If somebody writes a biography of George Washington, who knew George Washington, and hold on, let me at least.
Sorry, I thought I was muted. I apologize.
I know you don't. Let's say some crazy guy comes along and writes another thing about George Washington, never knew George Washington, and makes up a whole bunch of stuff. And they say, you know what? We can't trust anything. Let's just throw it all out. That's kind of what you're doing right now.
No, I think that's not the straw man, because the biography of George Washington is not something we're prescribing our life to. As far as, are we going to go kill people or not? Are we going to condemn people for committing abortion? Oh my God! Or are we going to condemn people for being gay? This is not happening in the biography of George Washington. And if it is, then we can definitely throw that out, whether it's written by an authentic author or not, or George Washington penned it by his own hand.
Whether we're basing our life on it has nothing to do with its trustworthiness and whether it should be accepted as historical narrative. Okay. I'm trying to get to the point that if the synoptics were based on, valid historical information, if we are to assume that John is basically fabricated and apocryphal, that doesn't mean we should throw out the true things that were said about Jesus, does it? Logically, assuming the presuppositions.
What is your barometer for determining which one is true?
Whatever happened in history. If let's just say the synoptics, Mark, Matthew, and Luke, basically got it right, and then because we know that this statement about ascending into heaven is unique to John. So if somebody comes along and writes John and puts that in there,
but even if you say history, even if you say whatever happened in history, we're talking about the life of Jesus Christ, and there's a good argument to be made that he isn't even a historical figure. Now, I'm not a mythicist. Okay,
There's no good argument to that effect.
Yeah.
All right.
Who said that?
Okay, but
Just ask Bart Ehrman. He's like, he's like the leading scholar on this. He says
Dirty,
Jesus
can you name me
existed.
any historical documents that actually mentions Jesus?
Ask Bart Ehrman, bro.
Oh,
wait,
you knew
Johnny, ask that. What about the Gospels? What about
why should
Yeah,
I
the
trust what the
Gospels are
Gospels
written.
say? They're all
Gospels are
mostly
written
hearsay.
Why should
decades
you-
later by anonymous authors, so that
We're
doesn't
not
make it a
asking-
historical account.
Yeah, we're not asking you to just. If you don't want to believe them, you have that right. But also, you can't just say that you can presuppose that they're just false and fabricated.
Well, no, I just.
Well, the issue is that they're not contemporary, or at least not
gave
as
you my reason
contemporary
why,
as we'd
though.
like to believe.
Okay, so
most of the stories about Abe Lincoln aren't contemporary. They've been
right.
Yeah, I've read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I don't think
And by
vampires
the way,
are real.
Yeah, but
I mean,
just because Vampire Hunter was written, that doesn't mean Abe Lincoln didn't exist.
No,
And,
But
and
that
myself
also
too.
doesn't mean I take anything in it as fact.
So
Well, some of it's fact. He was, 6'5" and blah, blah, like.
Yeah, but I don't get the facts from that book.
Okay, hey.
So let me when it comes to Matthew and Mark, you said they're not contemporary. I guess you're just dismissing the idea that they were written by the people in the described authorship.
I'm not just hand waving it away. What I'm doing is listening to what the
Not you,
majority of
Selku.
scholars, including Christian scholars, think.
Well,
Bart Ehrman says
I'm
Jesus
responding. I'm sorry, Dirty. I'm responding to the claim that these were not contemporary. They were written. If Jesus had lived a full life and hadn't been crucified, given by the text, then they would have been written within the time span he could have possibly lived. So that's kind of a contemporary account.
Yes, but if you actually look at what they're saying, they all appear to be just mostly hearsay. None of them actually appear to be first-hand accounts. They all.
You can. That's your opinion.
Especially Luke. If you actually look at Luke, Luke literally tells you that's what he's doing. He tells you he's just compiling reports from people.
Let me ask you this, Johnny. Johnny, let me ask you: is there any historical information outside the Bible that Mark actually wrote? The Gospel of Mark.
Not that I know of. I could be wrong.
Okay, well, good. So there's a video on my channel called.
Sure, I'll go watch it.
Yeah, there's a video on my channel called Papias, and now you can say Papias was lying or he was wrong, but he does very clearly say in the early 1st century that the tradition at that time, which is less than a century after the time of Christ, is that Mark was the personal interpreter of Peter, and that Peter wrote the Gospel. So there is a line of transmission that at least goes to the Gospel of Mark.
Well,
and hold on, one more thing.
Sure.
And he does also say that Matthew originally wrote down the sayings of Jesus Christ in Hebrew. So, okay, the skeptic will say, well, the current Matthew isn't that. Okay, fine. But Matthew wrote down a Hebrew version of Matthew that was extant at the time of Papias. So that's just historical.
If Matthew wrote down and actually spoke Hebrew, then how is it that he messed up the 7th chapter of Isaiah so badly with the whole virgin birth narrative? I mean, he clearly didn't know Hebrew because he thought that the word was for virgin, and he also didn't read the whole story, because if you read that story, it has nothing to do with the virgin whatsoever. So I have a hard time believing that Matthew actually spoke Hebrew.
Well, you've heard of interpolations, right? That could be some later scribe adding stuff to Matthew that wasn't in the original text.
So then,
sure,
it could be,
but then again, that just raises the question of why should I trust this in the first place? Because I agree with you that it probably was interpretation.
Yeah, so you can't discount the whole book based on one passage that was interpolated.
Basically, I agree with Dirty's methodology of, I think that Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there were, in the early phases of Christianity, sources out there that had this record. Unfortunately, due to a number of factors, the original manuscripts have been lost. But there does seem to be at least some valid reasoning to say that they are based on things that actually did exist, and there is a line of transmission, as I just demonstrated. So a fundamentalist is not going to take my line of argumentation, an evangelical fundamentalist, but nevertheless, there is a basis for the historicity of Christ and his teachings, and that the Gospels contain those teachings. So
and personally, I don't take the mythicist position. I think he was definitely a real person. I just don't think that any of the supernatural claims people made about him are actually true. I think most of the supernatural claims are just what people are making up. It's a game of telephone. It's somebody says something, somebody else says, well, this is actually what happened, and then it keeps going on until you got a mythology. I don't think that the mythology behind him is real.
Are you required to believe in the supernatural events?
Nope.
Well, to get into heaven.
Right. So, right. So the
I
point is
don't find them
moot
convincing,
because
so I'm
you
dead
have
so
to
far.
follow the commandments. He didn't say, "Oh, you have to believe I cured the blind."
Well, see,
Yeah.
here's the problem you want to know what my problem with Jesus in general is?
Sure.
Go ahead.
My problem with Jesus in general is that he just clearly wasn't the Messiah they were expecting at all. If you actually read the Old Testament prophecies, he didn't actually fulfill any of them the way he was supposed to, except maybe little things like he might have rode a donkey for Zechariah 9:9.
It sounds to me like you watch a lot of Deconstruction Zone.
Well, I do my
Justin.
own research as well. I mean, yeah, that's where I got it from.
No,
But
I'm not saying that just because because I hear these arguments being made, and my response to them is that yes, if you take the prophecies at a very literal level, that Jesus would be this giant, strong warrior who would free the Israelites from their oppressors. Yes, that did not happen in history. But again, we know from the Old Testament itself that one-to-one, fulfillments of prophecy is not what's expected. Like in Genesis, when there was a prophecy about the famine that would come in Egypt, the prophecy was that a bunch of cows would eat a bunch of other cows, and people were like, if you wouldn't take it really literally, then people would be looking for these cows eating each other. But obviously, the cows represented things, and obviously, the literal things that are in the words in the prophecies represent spiritual principles and things acting. So I think Jesus did liberate people from the ultimate oppressor, which is sin. So that's kind of how I'm going to go with it. But that's just my.
I think the problem with the Egypt narrative, the Egypt analogy, is that the Book of Genesis wasn't written until the Babylonian exile.
Yeah.
There might have been traditions
That's a
before
lie.
that.
That's a
No,
lie.
it's not a lie.
All right, well,
No
here's the
scholar
thing.
thinks that. They think it was maybe redacted during the
Hey,
Babylonian
Dirty.
exile, but the pre-existing texts were way before that.
You said, well, Johnny, hold on one second.
Okay, go ahead.
You made Objective Ethics made a definitive claim that the Book of Genesis was not written until the Babylon. Now, there is simply no way to even know that. Okay, so that is probably a position that some scholars take. I will yield that to you. But I'm sure there are a lot of scholars who think, just like Dirty said, that maybe there was a redactionary phase at that time. But the basis of it does go back to well before that. And there is historical archaeological evidence that it does go back before that.
Now, Dirty, are you aware that Moses could not have written Genesis?
Oh, I never said he did. I don't think he did.
Most people attribute him as the author. But the problem is that Genesis probably had to have been written sometime after the early Iron Age. And the reason for that is actually had to be written.
I don't know what you mean by Iron Age.
Well, the Iron Age.
The Iron Age started around 1100. The Iron Age started around 1100.
Yeah, iron has been in like the world since the beginning. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
we have something we call the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and if you don't know what he's talking about, I just explained it to you.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Now,
all right, I want a couple things here.
Just
I want to say Nunya Biz popped in. Nunya Biz is someone who has been on this channel a number of times before. He put a video in the private chat linking to a video that supposedly I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it is, but it apparently proves Jesus existed from extra biblical sources.
Why is it none of my business for?
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. But I guess my point is I haven't seen, going back to the again. Okay, you all go ahead. I'm still not seeing anything that y'all have said where Jesus commanded us to do something that you have proven is objectively evil. So to me, I'm a follower of Jesus. If you can prove to me Jesus was evil, then I will leave Christianity. But for now,
there was the one I brought up about him wanting to execute non-believers.
Well, can I say what I was going to say now real quick? Can I say what?
Okay, go ahead, Johnny. Yeah, go ahead, Johnny. Go ahead.
So Genesis had to be written somewhere after the early Iron Age, and the reason for that is because in Genesis, I think it's 14:14, they mention the city of Dan. The city of Dan did not exist until the early Iron Age. Before that, it was the city of Laish. So either.
What do you mean by Iron Age? Like, what are the dates? Like, because I don't know what Iron Age means. Like, was that 1992? When is the Iron Age?
Again, the Iron Age started around 1100 before the Common Era.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
And so you're saying that the Book of Genesis references a city of Dan, but it is not. It was called something else before that. Is that your argument?
Yep. It was called the city of Laish until it was conquered by the tribe of Dan, which happened in the early Iron Age. So
Okay, so let me ask you this: is it possible that that portion of the book was revised to reflect maybe there was an original manuscript that had the original title, and then when the cities changed its name, they changed it to Dan.
sure, but
So
that calls into question that whether it's trustworthy or not.
Well, okay, yeah, but
it,
1100 BC is like way before the Babylonian exile. So,
well, not really. I guess if you're coming at this from like there's an eternal book in heaven called the Bible, and God just kind of like sent it down to earth. Yeah, I know there are Christians who believe that concept of the Bible, but when you're taking a more, I guess, just a historical approach to the Bible, I can very much see, that portion of the Bible having been written perhaps before that time. And then as the things changed, maybe the manuscripts also were updated by the scribes to reflect the current situation. It's not untrue. It's not deception. It's not change. It's changing things to reflect. So the basis of the story is still true, but the names have been changed so that the people reading it at that time would understand what's happening. And those are the manuscripts that got copied till now.
And the turn of the Iron Age would have been much closer to the Babylonian exile than it would have been to the Exodus narrative.
well, it's like 600. Like the exile was in 700 BC, around there, right?
Well, yeah, okay, because right, I was thinking it started with the Assyria against Israel, but you're right. The Babylonian exile was around 750, 735, right. 750, something like that. Yeah.
Obviously, if Genesis is talking about the Exodus and stuff like that, or like whatever it's mentioning, it has to be written after that. So I'm not saying it was written before the
Exodus. and I was actually wrong, because I think the Exodus, now I think about it, is actually written is time stamped around 1400. Now the Christians are debating that because that's actually when the Hyksos were there, which is something I think I brought up before, maybe with you or somebody else, but I think it's based on the Hyksos thing, which is around 1500, 1450, 1500 BCE. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think some Christian scholars actually do try to put it closer to 1200, but it's really mapped out in the text itself if you want to get down to it. But we
can all agree that it was written after the events it describes, so there's no argument there.
Yeah, and I would say that there's absolutely no evidence, that we have any actual manuscripts of this. Now, I would agree, like I did before when we talked about this, that of course there's going to be oral tradition. There's going to be other texts or other sources that we just don't have, that we're going to assume it didn't just pop out of thin air in the Babylonian exile. That's not the claim. The claim is that what we have, the best evidence that we have, and the critical scholarship, which is ultimately what I'm citing here, is the critical scholarship puts it to around the Babylonian exile.
Well, they put the redaction during that time, but they all admit that the original pre-existing texts were existing before that.
Do you have evidence of that, though?
By the way,
they don't know what those texts were, though. So
there were some
to point at until but okay, that's fine, but you don't know what they were. You don't have anything to point at except for what we actually have.
I think they got it pretty well figured out with the JEPD documentary hypothesis. They know that P was written way after.
And I want to say there are extremely famous people in history for whom there is no doubt they existed, or very little doubt. I'll say that, like Homer, Pythagoras.
Well, I'm not promoting mythicism of Moses or Jesus. Well, I think this is just to clarify. I'm not promoting mythicism.
Hold on, let me respond. Let me finish. What I'm trying to say to you is, you're saying there's no direct evidence. Okay, there's no direct evidence of Pythagoras and Buddha and Homer and a variety of other very famous figures who no one doubts existed until hundreds or even sometimes thousands of years after they have supposedly lived. So yes, we lack a lot of the direct evidence that things that happened in antiquity, not just for the Bible, but for a vast array of places and people. So yes, you're right, but that doesn't mean that the evidence we have now doesn't reflect an actual reality of what happened. So I just want to put that out there.
But that's not the claim. That's not the claim. It's never been the issue. I have no issue with saying there was some pre-existing source. And I don't understand why you guys continue to get caught up on that. And frankly, you guys are misrepresenting what I'm saying and what I'm intending here. And you've done it a number of times now, and you're continuing to do it. I understand there's a pre-existing source. This didn't just pop up out of thin air. I don't know how many times I have to articulate that.
That's good.
I get that.
I misunderstood you then. I thought you were
don't-
saying that the entire book of Genesis was, written
That's what
during
it
the
sounded
Babylonian
like.
exile.
That's
What I'm
very
saying
much.
is
Hold on.
when
That's what.
scholars date critical scholars, okay, and I referenced this specific guy, which I've got the book still sitting here on my coffee table. I could read it to you guys again if you want to hear it. Matt Baker, a Jew himself, a practicing Jew, as a critical scholar. These critical scholars are dating these books to this period of time. That's what they're saying. They're dating the books to. That does not mean those critical scholars think it popped out of thin air either. Nobody thinks it just popped out of thin air. That's not what they're saying, and that's not what I'm saying.
Well, I think what it sounds to me like what you're saying is these documents were basically penned from some oral tradition at that time. And what I'm trying to argue is that I think that it's possible there was a redactionary phase, as Dirty Varmint points out. But I think that the original documents go way back before the Babylonian period. I mean,
Well, when you say
even when
original documents and I say an older source, we could possibly be referring to the same thing. The difference between us, I think, is the implication is that you're giving it way more substance than I'm probably willing to give it. And that I don't know where critical scholars stand on that either, because what are you talking about when you say, well, it's been redacted? What has been redacted? How much of it was redacted? I mean,
critical scholars, they have this thing called the documentary hypothesis, and there's a source J, source E, source P, source D, and P is obviously a later addition and redaction, and J and E are obviously earlier. So it's like there's a lot.
No, I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with that, and so are critical scholars when they make their estimations. I'm fully aware of all that documentary hypothesis. It's a very interesting hypothesis too. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, I'm not willing to go through word by word, line by line to decipher or discern for myself if that's the best answer, because the documentary hypothesis, as you know, if you've looked into it, it's literally like paragraph by paragraph where different insertions are made and stuff like that. I mean, it's really it's pretty interesting how scholars have the patience to do that, and I think it makes sense to me. But again, how much of it is going to go back to what period? That's why I say the best thing we could do,
really,
because the text we have to work with, right? That most people are being willing to agree on and say, look, let's start. Now we know there's a tradition that goes back. Obviously, the Hebrews came out of the land of Canaan much longer back, right? Than the Babylonian period. So there's obviously a tradition going back that far. The story of Moses is tied to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which goes back to the 2500, 3000 BCE. And the oral tradition must be later. So, of course, these traditions go way back. But let's start with what we actually have to work with, which is this allegedly, and I would agree with you gentlemen both, it sounds like we're on the same page, that let's go with the highly redacted copy that we have now, and we're willing to put it, let's say, to the Babylonian period when they were in exile and really trying to regroup from this diaspora right before the Persians let them go back. We can really, in history, and when we look at the meat of the Old Testament, and we look at what really they got accurate historically, it really focuses around that Babylonian period. And that's what the archaeological evidence is showing us. That's what the textual evidence is showing us. And that's the best starting place we have. That's not to say that this doesn't go back much further. That's not the claim at all.
Okay, fair enough. The original reason I came up is I want to question you about, you were talking about how God killed babies during the flood and everything. And I just wanted to question you, like, maybe you've never thought of it this way, but would you ever consider exterminating termites, for example, that were, ruining the house that you had built? Would you ever consider doing that?
So I will tell you two things. First of all, according to my worldview on objective morality, it is actually immoral for me to exterminate those termites. However, it is less harm for me to exterminate the termites than it is for my family to be sleeping out in the cold because we don't have a roof over our heads. So at the end of the day, I have to make a decision between two immoral acts.
Yeah.
And the less immoral thing to do is to exterminate those termites. That is
you wouldn't exterminate the termites. Okay.
But
so it's kind of hypocritical for you to, say,
Dirty.
Oh, God is evil, blah, blah, blah.
But Dirty, is God all powerful and can do anything within logic?
No.
Oh, he's not all powerful.
Nope.
Then why should we worship a being that's not all powerful?
Well, because he's your creator and he's more powerful than you are.
But how do you create things if he's not all powerful? You do know what all powerful in this context means, right? It means can do anything within logic.
No, he can't. He can't. I mean, like, what do you, I'm still not sure what you mean.
I
Anything within logic? But
I believe that God can do anything within logic. That's my
Okay,
dirty varmint. I'm not going to disagree with that, but
okay.
to me, I think that violating free will is.
but he does that a lot, though.
And I understand that in the Bible there are verses which indicate that. For me, God does not violate the laws of nature, and one of the laws of nature, of creation, whatever you want to call it, is that sentient beings have free will. So that is never actually violated. I mean, you can say God inspires us, God influences us, God really convicts us, or one way or the other.
So couldn't he have influenced them to a better path instead of just
Yeah,
murdering all of his children?
I influence someone when you can tell them to, don't do that. That's influencing someone. Okay, when you speak to someone and you ask them to do something, you're influencing. They can choose not to or to do it. God, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't. What's the point you're making? What does being all powerful have to do with destroying creatures that are
If you're
pissing
all
you off?
powerful, then there are surely better ways that you can handle something than just by killing them all. Like, for example, you used the termite analogy. If you're all powerful, you could simply move those termites outside instead of
What if the
having them
termites?
use your house.
No, you can't. If the termites don't want to move, what are you going to do?
If you're all powerful, you can take them to the forest where there's rotting wood.
All right.
Yeah, that's where you're wrong about God. Maybe he is all powerful, but he's already decided that he's going to give these termites free will, and he's not going to take that away and just magically move them.
They could influence them.
So you're going to say, well, again, the termites are ultimately the ones choosing, okay, what they want to do, even at that basic level of consciousness. All right. So they're going to choose to continue eating the wood. God is not going to possess the termites and make them do.
But this is not hypocritical according to my worldview, because the termites' free will caused them to move into my house and destroy it. So it's self-defense for me to move them, to kill them if I can't move them outside. Now, I still said it's immoral, but it's less immoral because I didn't start the fight. I'm finishing the fight. And I would invite them. I will put a stack of wood out, away from the house and see if they'll move out there. And if they don't
you
move
wouldn't.
out,
You're not gonna. You're making stuff up.
He's giving a hypothetical.
Objective. Let me ask you this: why is your perspective on what? So you have 10,000 termites in your home, and you have 5. Let's just say hypothetically, maybe not really. You have 5 people in your family. Why do the 5 people in your family trump the well-being of the thousands of termites in your house?
Because according to this analogy, it's established that my home is there. The termites are moved in. Now, if I went if I decided I wanted to go build a home and I decided to mow over a termite pile to do it, then yeah, that would probably be unethical to do that, because I'm moving, the termites out of their home to move my family.
Yeah, but just admit you're not going to care. You don't care about the termites, dude.
Oh, so God
Can I? I think I know where the disconnect is here.
Selkirk, go ahead. Try to help us.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Sal?
I think I know where the disconnect is here. I think the issue with this analogy is that we're not the ones who created the termites with the goal to eat houses.
That's true.
We're not punishing them for doing what we created them to do.
But they are doing something that you don't want them to do.
Yeah,
but I didn't create them to do that.
I guess I understand that. I guess this is more of an internal critique for objective ethics viewpoint. He wants to say that well-being is the basis for what is ethical and moral. Okay. Well, there are 10,000 termites in his house whose well-being is dependent on them living there. And for some reason, objective ethics thinks his well-being is objectively more important than theirs. So please establish that.
Yeah, like I said.
Let me ask this question. Why is your well-being more important than the thousands of termites you're going to kill to get out of your house?
It's an equal well-being across, because all life is equally valid. The problem is that I'm living there, I'm established there. They're coming into my home to violate my well-being first. So listen, let me give you an example. This termite analogy is a real stretch, but let's go ahead and do something. So let's say one person wants to own someone as a slave. The other person doesn't want to be a slave. You have 2 people that are equally human and equally have free will, right? How do we determine which one's right? The way we determine this is by saying that this being owned taken as property, losing your autonomy, losing your dignity, so on and so forth, losing your free will. Okay, that is a far more, bigger imposition of will than the will to just simply want to own somebody is. So we side with the slave and say that's not okay. We don't side with the slave owner, even though they both have free will, even though they're both humans. You have to make a determination.
Let's create another hypothetical world. There are two people in this world. There is the slave owner and there is the slave. The slave owner's well-being is dependent on owning the slave. The slave's well-being is dependent on not being a slave. So there are two people, each one whose well-being is dependent on doing the opposite of what the other wants. What is the objective standard by which we determine who's better
The objective standard is the same as I mentioned. It's the bigger imposition of will. Okay, that we have to go with the greatest reduction of harm. The greatest reduction of harm. It's the greatest reduction of harm is that what morality is always going towards. Okay, so it's like you put water on a slope, the water is always going to run in a certain direction. That's how morality works. It doesn't mean that the water can't flow in multiple directions, but as soon as you put a slope to that, as soon as you put a gradient to that, now that water is going that direction. That's like morality. As soon as you put a gradient to it, say, well, let's compare two things. Which one holds weight and which one doesn't? Which one tilts morality, the slope in one direction or another? That's where morality leads.
Okay, so now you're adding another variable, which is imposition of will. So please explain to me why. Hold on. Why is it limiting imposition of will objectively from a universal sense better than not limiting someone's will?
No, you got that backwards. It's better to not let. Excuse me.
Right. Okay. Let me rephrase the question. Why is it objectively morally superior to not limit someone's will in a universal and transcendental sense compared to limiting someone's will?
Because we all have the free will. We all want to have autonomy. We all want to make our own decisions. We all want to be free, quote unquote free. That's what we are desirous to be. And it comes down to a biological sense of evolution is we want to survive as a species.
No. In my hypothetical world, two people, we all don't want that. The slave owner, his well-being, what he wants is to own the slave. He doesn't care about objective impositions of will. Okay, so you have to say that this law of not imposing will applies to all people at all times, objectively, universally, and transcendentally of the people involved. So how are you going to do that?
As I just explained to you. So it comes down to the very bare bones of it, the whole thing. It's just part of evolution is that we have a need,
part of evolution,
to survive, right? To procreate. So because of that need, that's what well-being starts at. That's what well-being starts at. We know we have wills. Okay. Now I know some people argue about free will. I personally do not, because when I look into those arguments, they get very into philosophical, and it comes down to determinism versus actual what we experience in real life. And what we experience in real life is that I can decide to go left or I can decide to go right, blah, 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 blah. So that's where I'm stamping free will at when we're talking about free will. When you start talking about determinism, that's a whole different conversation. But if we're going to accept as a group that we actually have free will, the imposition of free will is immoral.
All right. So what you said, this is your own words. You can go back and listen to it. We evolved to have a will that basically feels a certain way. So if our genes, which determine our thoughts, had evolved to enslave each other, like we see in a lot of places in the animal kingdom, that's what would be objectively moral, according to you?
No, that's where free will and comes into being, and well-being comes into being is the survival. And what we look at is we're all surviving together as species. We're all interconnected as species. The entire world, the entire planet, animals and people and plants have to work together for the propagation, the benefit of everybody.
All right. So I'm going to go back to this is your own words. You said we evolved to basically have these ideas. And what I'm telling you is if our ideas are based on our evolutionary history, then if the random genetic mutations in our genome, in our gene code, had programmed us to think that enslaving each other is all right, is that what the moral system you would go by? Because if you look at the apes, they sexually assault each other and brutalize each other and murder. They evolved to murder each other and sexually, and the male apes don't ask the female apes for consent. So if we had evolved to be that way, that's your objective ethical system you would go with?
No, so that would be how we are interacting with the world around us, but that doesn't establish what the moral code actually is.
Okay, so evolution
Code
has
is-
nothing to do.
is-
So what you originally said, that our evolutionary history is what determines what is right, that is no longer what you think, correct?
No, for
No,
humans, he's trying to say.
For humans.
You're twisting this around. So try to listen, please, because you're completely got this
Okay.
twisted up.
All right, go.
Okay, so evolution is the propagation of the species, right? But all species are tied together. We have it's called a food chain, right? So if humans terraform the planet too much, we will do this at our own detriment. Okay, and we see this with warming and all other kind of things. Okay, so we can be our own detriment. So we have to learn to work with each other, with all other species, work together. Any species that becomes dominant becomes invasive, and an invasive species is an immoral by definition, by my definition, action.
Your
Right?
definition.
So, yeah,
All right,
exactly.
guys, I gotta go. I'll see y'all later.
All right, John. Well, hold on. Before you go, I just want to say thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome back. Certainly. So thank you for
course.
coming. All right.
Selkuth, Objective Ethics. I'll see y'all later. Bye, Dirty Varmint. I'll see you later. You have a good
All right,
day.
take care, man.
You all have a good day. I hope you enjoy the rest of the stream. I really appreciate you guys inviting me. I really had a great time talking about this. So I'll definitely be back. I'll definitely be back. Thank you.
Cool.
You have a good day.
You too. All right, Objective. What you were saying?
I think I said it.
What I'm trying to get to you is, first of all, I'm trying to get you to, this is actually what the debate was supposed to be about. And I'm not trying to criticize you. I actually enjoyed the debate. The problem is you did absolutely nothing, in my opinion, to ground your morality. What you did was attack the Bible, which is fine. That's a good debate to have. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are interested in that topic. But I think you did almost nothing to ground morality in a naturalistic perspective. Nothing whatsoever. All you did was undermine the biblical worldview, which is, if the Bible is evil, is a good thing to do. But again, you didn't establish your own perspective by any means. And again, I'm not trying to come at you and attack you. I'm just saying, like, because it's two sides of the same coin. There's the other worldview. But if we're trying...
Well, I gave out the theory, all the premises, and the conclusion, and Ray didn't
Let's hear it
address
again.
it. So
Let's hear it again. Because you presented your perspective.
Yeah, I will. I'll tell you. I got to get my medication ready, so give me like 5 minutes. Talk amongst yourselves, and then I'll go ahead and go give it the theory again.
Actually, Objective, we're about to, because of time limitations, unfortunately, we're about to close things down.
Okay, so, I will do. Like I said, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat of that last video, and then you guys can hit me up. We can do another. That way, you guys can really mull it over and pick it apart, and then you can come with organized questions. Okay.
How long is it going to take you to take your medication?
I'm going to need about 5 minutes.
Okay. How about this? We will discuss amongst ourselves for 5 minutes. When you return, we will start to close the stream down. Does that sound fair?
Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So Cell and Dirty Varmint and Ray. I'm not even sure if Ray is still here. I don't know if anyone has anything to say based on what's already been said, but go ahead if you do.
I have something.
All right, Dirty. Well, go ahead. Yeah. Sal, do you want to go?
Yeah. Okay. I just want to say I have a bit of a different perspective because I actually don't believe in objective morals. I'm just a subjective, secular morals kind of person.
So he's honest.
So,
yeah, good for you.
Well, I don't want to insult anyone there, but and I do quickly want to say thanks for letting me back. I know I had a bit of a tantrum, and I don't know, when I feel like I'm being condescended to, it gets to me a lot, and I should have conducted myself better. So
no, you had a very natural reaction, and these panels can get heated, and it can be very frustrating at times. So I'm not criticizing you at all.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, my stance on morals is pretty simple. Look, whatever causes the least amount of harm is, by definition, sort of the better thing to do. But that's very, very situational, like the baby Hitler sort of thing you pin me down on. Yeah, it's not something I've really thought about. I guess, in essence, I'm taking a bit of a cowardly out on that, in that I treat it sort of like the trolley problem, You know the trolley problem, right? I'm sure it's like
I've heard,
baby's first philosophy. Yeah, I'm sure you know.
Right.
Yeah, where the issue is sort of once you involve yourself in the situation, you're now responsible for whatever happens.
Yeah,
I guess that was sort of my thinking there.
Reducing harm. Okay, so I guess the thing is, we're thinking about grounding well, here's the thing. You've yielded that there is no objective morality, so that can be your opinion about what's right. But if baby Hitler grows up and wants to exterminate all the whoever's, then his perspective is going to be different from yours, and you can't objectively say that he's wrong about that. And he's going to murder a whole lot of people because of his view of what's. Honestly, this is going to sound. I want to be very clear. I'm not defending Hitler, but I will say,
I know. That's all good.
If you listen to what Hitler said, he very much believed that he was doing the right thing. Okay, there are evil people in history who knew that they were evil. Hitler was actually of the mindset that he was right. Everything he was doing was what needed to be done to save humanity and society. So at that point, he feels like what he's doing is moral and justified and good. So is there an arbiter, a standard by which humans can point to say, actually, no, you're not correct?
Well, that's the thing. I don't want there to be any sort of arbiter, because that's the thing that I find frightening about religion, is that it proposes an arbiter, and it's seemingly very inconsistent on what the followers of that thing say is okay to do. I mean, Hitler, I don't know if he was Christian per se, but a lot of the Nazis were. The Catholic Church gave him support for at least a time. I think they did retract it once it got really bad. But he did have like creationist sort of views. And I just say that because a lot of people, for some reason, try to throw out that if you're an atheist, you're a Nazi, because there was like a Nazi organization. And I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, well, I guess my point is that even though the discussion tonight was good, it's one I've heard a million times. I was hoping to hear more about objective establishing his own perspective as opposed to attacking the Bible, which, okay, let's say you get rid of the Bible. It's all a myth. It's all crazy lies. It's bad for society. He still didn't establish his own worldview. And honestly, I would really like to hear someone solve the problem of how naturalism can provide a universal, transcendental set of morals for all people at all times and all places. And I just didn't hear that tonight. Who left us? I guess Ray left us. Yeah. So okay, Ray. Ray.
Yeah, and look, I do agree with you in the place. I think there is no such thing. Personally, I think there's no such thing as a 100% objective moral system, because things just sort of we've been slowly finding our way over the last few centuries to figure out how to be decent.
Let me ask you this, Sel. Do you think this is going to be an easy question? It's not a trick question.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I'm leading you down a path, as they say.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think the law that like gravity is a law that applies to all people, all times, in all places?
I think it applies to all matter, which we're made of. So,
right.
yes.
So we're made our bodies, our physical bodies.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, I'm bad. I'll answer yes or no questions.
So, no, you're doing good. You're doing good. I'm just trying to establish a reason why it is conceivable that there could be a universal. So to me, and again, this is somewhat speculative, somewhat conjectural, but just like there are laws that govern the physical matter of the universe, to me, I think the mind has real substance. When I say the mind, it could be synonymous with the soul. There's actually could be almost thought of as a mind body that basically is the source of our will, and it exists independently of the body. And I think just like there are laws that govern the physical aspects of the universe, I think there are laws that govern the mind. And I think those laws apply to us after our bodies are, we die and our minds detach from our bodies. So to me, this provides at least a theoretical basis, not a proven, empirically demonstrated basis, but a theoretical basis for objective morality, in the same sense that gravity is objectively applied to all people. The laws of the mind apply to all people at all times, and they are depending on what we do in this life. So I don't know how you would respond to that, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I think obviously that first point, I think we'll have to agree to disagree on. I think the brain is just sort of a physical thing, and I see no reason to think it's anything transcendent of that. As far as gravity goes, like, I don't know. Like obviously, it's a prescriptive law. It's nothing we have any control of. Like it's not and I don't think gravity is something that was decided. It's just how things are.
And and now we're going to that was an interesting comment.
Why is that how it is?
Why are things the way they are, in your opinion? Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, just because if things weren't the way they were, we wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't be able to observe them being different. And as far as whether this is how universes have to be, whether we're a 1 in a billion chance of a universe, I have no idea because I've never seen another universe to see what they're like. So it's just something that
if the laws of physics were different than what they are, then maybe wouldn't exist. But they would be different. They would still be whatever they are. But what I'm trying to ask you is, they are the way they are, and as far as we know, they are not anything different. So would you agree to the statement that there is a reason, even if we don't know what it is, there is a reason that the laws of physics are what they are, right?
I'd say a reason as in an explanation, not
there is an explanation.
Right.
Right. So maybe the explanation is that a God, a creator of the universe, made them that way. Just throwing that out there again, it's not something I can prove scientifically, but I think that's within the realm of being a possibility, because we don't know why the laws of it. You're right. There's no one who knows why the law of gravity is as strong as it is and how it acts the way it does. We just observe it doing what it does, and that's true of all the laws of nature. The question we have to ask is, well, why are they this way? And we simply don't know.
Well, that's sort of drifting into a fine-tuning sort of area, and I don't know. That's not one I find particularly compelling myself, just because, like I said,
we do have the bottom line of it is that there must be an explanation for it. Can't just be like, well, this is just let's take an electron, for example. An electron is drawn, electricity is by the flow of electrons, right? Electrons flow towards a positive source, or they're the negative. When we look at this, we don't know why it's happening. We just observe it happening. But there must be a reason for them to do that, because they're moving, they're there, they exist. So why do they do this? They are just this way. Well, they could have done something else. They could have just sat where they are. They could have not gone towards positive. Positive is just a language for that they go in that direction, really. So
I have to actually wrap this up myself. So if you want me to go over that, just in response to what you said, in order to assume that things aren't just the way they are because the way they are, you have to demonstrate that there's an alternate possibility.
No, you don't. What you have to demonstrate is all we see is that things are a certain way they are, and they are not a different way. So the question becomes, what is the explanation for the basis of why things are the way they are? I think one possibility is God. But what I'm going to do is I don't want to have the last word on that point. So if anyone wants to respond to that, we'll go ahead, and then we're going to go to closing statements, and we're going to shut things down. So anyone who wants to respond to anything I've just said can do that, and then we'll go to closing statements.
Well, I'm an agnostic, so as far as I'm concerned, I have no problem with that. Your hypothetical something God could be the answer. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. I'm not going to buy into that until somebody actually demonstrates it. But as far as is it a possibility, I would have to say absolutely. I give it a 50-50. But I'm an agnostic, so of course that's what I'm going to say.
All right. Anybody else? So
I mean, I'd say I call myself an atheist because I'm atheistic to all the God propositions sort of given through different religions. I don't find any of them to be believable personally. I'm agnostic in that I can't prove there isn't one, but I think that's sort of the same way I'm agnostic on something like Bigfoot or aliens or the Tooth Fairy or something like that. So, could it be a God? Sure. But do I have any reason to properly consider that possibility? No.
All right. Dirty, do you have a comment on this kind of discussion about laws of physics and things like that?
No, not that. No.
Okay. Well, if you have something else to say about something else, then you're going to have to reserve it for your final comments. So what we're going to do is basically just these are the final comments. You can take a few minutes uninterrupted to just summarize your thoughts, make any points you want to say. It could be about basically anything that's been discussed tonight, or you can just tell us what your favorite flavor of ice cream is for the last couple of minutes, but just try to be respectful and don't take all night, just a few minutes. So we're gonna start with Cell, and then go Dirty, and then Objective, and then I'll close things out. Okay, Cell, go first.
Well, I've never done this before, so excuse me and my nasally voice because I'm still sick. Um, but yeah, thanks for having me on. It was an interesting discussion. I got a bit heated. I apologize for that. I get a bit frustrated, and the topic of the Bible, especially, and sort of Christian ethics, and that definitely gets me impassionate, let's say. But yeah, it's a good discussion, and I'll leave it there.
All right. Well, appreciate it, and you're welcome back. Oh, I kicked the wrong person.
Nope.
Oh,
Whoops.
oh no, Dirty Varmint, can you join again? I meant to do this. Dirty Varmint, are you out there? I didn't mean to kick you. Oh shoot, I feel bad. I don't know if you can hear me. Hold on, let's give Dirty Varmint. Let's see if he has a minute to rejoin. There
Yeah,
he
I've
is.
got time. There we go.
Sorry, Dirty Varmint. Yeah, give your. I don't know how
it went silent. I was like, "What? What happened?"
Yeah, I literally clicked the wrong icon and clicked kick from studio. So, anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to come up and I thought that objective ethics was displaying hypocrisy with the termite issue. Like, I think that he would have no qualms about destroying an entire colony of termites, and he's not going to discriminate between infant termites or adult termites. He's just going to wipe them all out because they're making his life miserable. And I think it's hypocrisy because it's like we're kind of like equivalent to termites compared to God. He's way bigger than us, and so why would you attack God for how bad he is for destroying his own, what he has the right to destroy. And as far as the all-knowing thing, somebody had said, well, God is all-knowing, so it's not analogous. And I'm like, well, in the Bible, like there's a passage in Exodus 23:29 where it's talking about God leading the people into Canaan. He says, I will not drive them out before you in a single year. Otherwise, the land would become desolate and wild animals would multiply against you. So it's obvious in this passage that there's some limitations to what God's going to do. He's not going to let the people go into Canaan in a single year because otherwise the animals are going to multiply against them, and it's going to become a big problem. And so God is not all powerful in this passage, at least, because at least he's chosen to behave in a certain way. He's not just going to magically make the animals disappear so that the people can go into Canaan. He's obviously made a set of rules that he's also going to follow. And so I think it is analogous that the termites are like we are to God as termites are to humans. And there's a Bible passage that takes it one step further and says that humans are like grass compared to God. And so if objective ethics, if you would mow the grass in your yard, then you have no place to accuse God of evil doing for destroying what he has the right to destroy. And I yield.
All right, Dirty. Thank you for joining and engaging, interacting.
All right, thanks.
All right, objective.
Yeah, I think it's interesting points brought up by everybody, and I just want to make sure to thank. Is his name Mark or Ray? I can't remember what that gentleman's name was. I always know him as Raph, but
Ray.
Yeah. Ray, yeah. I really appreciate him taking time out of his weekend. I appreciate you taking time out of your weekend or Friday night, whatever it is right now. Appreciate all the people who joined the panel afterwards. I appreciate the people who watched the debate. I think these are really interesting topics and important things for us to consider with how we navigate the world that we are living in right now. We've got Israel committing genocide against Gaza right now because of their beliefs, essentially is what this comes down to, the Zionism and all this other stuff that's going on. It's not stopped. It's not stopping. And we need to get better. We need to start doing better as societies. And probably the best thing we could do is start getting rid of these religious beliefs because of what they're doing to people. Now, I would love to see religious people take up the mantle of pacifism like you're talking about, and actually start caring for everybody, including gay people and transsexual people and women who will have abortions, and actually treating them with the dignity that they deserve to be treated with as human beings. And then maybe we can have that conversation. And I'm all for it. I got no problem with religion at that point. So it's basically what I'm dealing with is what I'm seeing being played out in society firsthand. When I look back at history, I haven't seen any anything better. It's only worse because more and more people were dogmatic about these religions. So I just think that, as we move away from these types of humanistic or anthropomorphized religions where we've got these gods giving laws and stuff, and move more towards deism, panpsychism, Buddhism, if things of this nature, I would absolutely never debate anybody about those things because they don't have inherent problems as far as I'm concerned. So just to get that out there. As far as the hypothesis goes, and I appreciate what Dirty Varmint was trying to do with the analogy. The problem is the analogy completely fails because it's certainly not, like we've mentioned several times, the analogy is never going to be as good as the thing that it is, because if it was actually describing the thing that it is, it wouldn't be an analogy, right? It is what it is. I can only deal with so much of it. But the question is not whether or not I'm being hypocritical or not. The question is whether or not it's immoral or not. And as I stated before, it is immoral whether I choose to do it or not. That's not the question. So I admit that it's immoral to kill the termites either way, whether they're in my house or whether I'm mowing the grass or whatever. It's immoral. It comes down to balancing the lesser of evils, and there's going to be a subjective way that I'm going to look at that, but other people can look at it as well, and it can be judged by society, by the group, and we can come up to the best understanding the same way we did when it came to slavery or letting women vote or any of the other issues. We have to look at each thing on a case-by-case basis, and we have to step outside of our own paradigm and accept, or at least consider what other people are saying, and then consider what the majority is saying. And that's how we determine how we can navigate with the natural law of morality. And the natural law of morality, according to my hypothesis, the way that I've described it, just for the group here, premise number one, anything that comports to reality is an objective truth. Premise number two, morality requires action and is the active pursuit of well-being. Premise number three, well-being is the greatest possible reduction of harm in any given imposition of free will. The conclusion, well-being is tied to morality and does comport to the reality of maximal harm reduction. Therefore, objective morality is true. So if anybody wants to consider those, that you have to, in order to prove me wrong, you need to disprove any one of the premises and therefore disprove the conclusion. And once again, Ace, I thank you as always for your time, brother. I wish you and your family and everyone else absolutely the best, okay? Oh, the other thing I do want to say really quickly is that I have been on your channel a lot, and I know this is a Christian channel, and I do not want your audience to think that every time they try to log on to one of your videos, they're going to have to deal with some agnostic who wants to save all the termites and all this stuff. You know what I mean? So I probably will be logging into videos, but unless you really want to do a specific thing, I'd love to be involved in whatever you do, but I'm not going to just invite myself in for for at least a couple streams and let you and your Christian audience build something or whatever, because I just don't want them to start avoiding your channel if they think that it's going to be antagonistic or there's going to be a bunch of atheists or agnostics like myself on here. And it's not because I haven't really enjoyed the time. And like I said, if you personally invite me and say, hey, I've got actually a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about that we brought up, I'm happy to come on. But I want to be respectful of you and I want to be respectful of your audience. So I will probably be a viewer for the next video or two and then jump back onto the streams again. It's not like you're not making me feel unwanted. They're not making me feel unwanted. I want to extend that offer to you guys.
Yeah, I guess as far as that goes, just before we part ways, maybe what I can do is set up like a more of a specific prompt or question in the video titles I put forward. So if I set it like open panel, like is the Trinity true? You're probably not going to be interested in that kind of conversation or something like that. But if the proposition is like, is the Bible true or is God exist? That would be probably more applicable to where you're at. Or, is Jesus really, these are, so I guess what kind of like look at the prompt is. And again, if you're the only one who joins, then we can talk about what you want to talk about. But like if the prompt is like what is true Christian salvation? Well, you don't believe in salvation, so wait for someone else and see if they have anything to say and debate the matter. And then if no one joins, we can talk about more like secularist issues and things like that. So maybe that's how we'll do that going forward.
That's a great way to navigate that, because I do like your prompts and I do agree. I can always sit in the chat because I do intend, and when I ever get a notification, I intend to come back every time because I'm just sitting here recovering from surgery. So I will be in the audience. And then, like I say, like you said, if nobody's jumping in or the topic is something that I can participate in, and then I'm absolutely, that sounds great. And then also, again, we've discussed several things, but haven't really nailed anything down. So if you ever go back over the elevators, we can talk about the mind. We could talk about the eternal soul. I mean, there's a lot of things that are quote unquote theological, but we could approach from a philosophical basis. We could talk about, I'd love to get into the Noah's flood. I love debunking that thing. If Dirty Varmint ever wants to come get cooked on that again, any of the stuff that we've talked about, so I'm all for it. I just want to be respectful to everybody and make sure that you and the audience knows that I'm not just here to invite myself in every time and take all your time and attention.
I understand, no, but every time you join, it's a productive conversation. So that's really what I care about more than anything. Like I've argued the Trinity with people 1,000 times already. So, it's good to have a wide variety of discussions about a number of topics. So you certainly just be on the lookout and see where the discussion applies to where you're at, where you contribute.
Yeah, that sounds good, brother. All right, I'm gonna let you do your outro. Thanks for having me.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So again, this is an after show for a debate. I recommend everyone go watch the debate. It was an interesting one. The question was, what provides a better foundation for morality? Is it naturalism or is it theism? And the conversation quickly descended into a discussion about things that happened in the Bible and God did in the Bible, whether God was right or wrong to do those things. Which is an interesting conversation, but it's certainly not the original prompt. But that's fine. That's how the debaters wanted to go about it, so that's what I allowed to happen. I was aware that it was kind of off topic the entire time, but again, it wasn't my debate. I was just here providing the platform for the two people, debating the issues. A couple things that were mentioned during the outros. The Israelis are. This is something that was brought up. That Israel is committing genocide against Gaza, the Gazans. And it's like, well, just because of religion. Actually, no, it was a result of Hamas terrorists attacking them and murdering, I don't remember, it was hundreds or thousands of Israeli citizens. I guess in their view, Israel reducing harm means just allowing their citizens to be killed by this terrorist organization. You're not allowed to defend yourself. You're not allowed to retaliate against the people who are murdering your citizens. And I get it. We can criticize the whether Israel's response is measured enough or whether it's over the top. I think there's a lot of questions there about whether Israel has gone too far and the civilian casualties. But it's not. It was not about religion. It was about Israel got attacked first. There's just no denying that. A lot of their citizens got killed, and at that point, are they right to be able to say, we don't want this to happen again? We're going to attack the people who did this, which is obviously the Hamas, the leaders of Palestine. And if you want to get rid of them, you have to invade Palestine and kill them, which is not a pretty thing to do because Gaza is a densely populated area, and there's going to be civilian casualties. So no, Israel isn't just going in and just haphazardly just massacring people. I know that there's probably war crimes that have been committed and things like that, but I just want to, and I don't really particularly care for Israel, so I'm not trying to defend them, but to throw that out there and just act like Israel just has this religious beef against the Gazans and that's why they're going there. No, that's just not correct. It's not historically correct. Trans rights were brought up, so I guess we have to deny biological sex and just refer to people by what they feel. So we're going to deny. Objective said that truth is what corresponds to reality. So if you're a man, you're a man. You have to prove to me otherwise. For me to use your pronoun, you have to prove to me that you're actually a woman, because I want to believe what's true. If you're born with male genitalia, you have XY chromosomes, then to me, science says you're a man. And you're trying to impose your will upon me to make me use your pronouns, even though I believe you're a man. So I think reducing harm means telling the truth and saying what I believe is true, which is that men are men. People with XY chromosomes are men. XX chromosomes are female. That's science. That's truth. And so, again, we're getting into they want their subjective preferences to be, and this is why they have no objective reality. Again, abortion. Abortion was brought up. We have to respect women who want to make these choices. Okay, well, what about the human being that's growing inside that womb? I mean, do we just get to terminate that growing human being doesn't have rights? Well, it's not a human until it gets outside the womb. How did you make that decision? Is it a human 5 minutes before it's born? Well, yeah, but at some point it's not a human. It's just a product. It's just a couple cells. Well, where's the dividing line? What's the objective truth? What's the objective reality? Is there a God beyond us who doesn't like, children being cut up in the womb and killed, their life terminated? Just because you're attached to an umbilical cord, that means you don't have rights? Just because, like, think about a baby 5 minutes after it's born. All of a sudden it has rights, but it didn't have rights 5 minutes before? Well, how far do you go? Is there a way to determine? Is there an arbiter who stands outside of us and says, life begins at conception? I mean, I don't see how you get around the fact that life begins at conception. And when you're conceived, you can't get to an adult human being until you go through, the zygote divides and becomes 2 cells, and then 4 cells, and then 8 cells, and so on and so forth. You can't get to a human being until you develop in the womb. So, what's the objective morality there? I guess you say, well, the woman wants her rights. Okay, well, that little baby wants its rights too. It's a human being. I mean, I know it has rights, but it's a living thing. So if something isn't aware of what the concept of rights, we can kill it. I guess you could apply that to something that's a child that's 3 months old, 6 months old, maybe a year, 2 years, who knows? Again, so objective has his idea of what he believes is right, which is letting the woman kill the unborn baby. Okay, but how do you ground that in objective reality and objective truth? Is it that objectively real, or are you actually murdering a real human being in the eyes of a real and living God? Okay, so the Bible says, "I formed you in the womb. I knew you before you were born." Okay, well, you can say the Bible's myth, but maybe that's true. You can't just presuppose that your view is moral because you think women would prefer to have consequence-free sex, or I guess there are some situations where their health is on the line, but a lot of times it's just a matter of birth control. So we get to kill a developing human being in the womb because a woman regrets her decision. I mean, you're harming that baby. Those little fetuses can feel pain. This is scientifically proven. You're harming it by chopping it up, and this is what abortions are. You have to, I hate to say this, you have to dismember the child to get it out, especially depending on its level of development. They don't just disappear into the ether. So there's a medical procedure that basically gets rid of it in a very gruesome way. So this is where objective morality would actually come into play. Is there something outside of ourselves that determines what is right or wrong in that case, in the case of the war in Israel, in the case of transgender rights? Yeah, okay, you say a reality of self, but does reality of self include a moral law that exists independent of our own preferences and feelings? I would say that can only exist if God exists, because morals are an abstraction that exists in the mind. You know what? I just realized I'm actually the one debating, so I'm giving my opinion about what I think is true and what isn't. But I guess I have that right. I will say, in regards to the debate, I was very interested in hearing if objective ethics would provide a foundation for a transcendental objective morality that applies to all people at all times. I simply did not hear it. I heard subjectivism. I heard I feel like. I heard undefined terms like reducing harm. Well, okay, so what if one person's harming another? What if one person thinks that reducing harm means doing what they want, and the other person has another idea? They have different ideas of what. This is the whole discussion. Everyone's opinion. There are very few people who would say to themselves, "I'm causing more harm." This is what disagreements are. A lot of the time, it's two people who think that doing different things reduces harm. You have the communists who want to take control of the government and tax everyone to oblivion and redistribute wealth to eliminate poverty. Okay, well, they're reducing harm by giving underprivileged people a chance by taking money from the rich and giving it to. And then you have people, well, when you tax society, you destroy businesses, you take away people's private property, they earned it, you're stealing from them to give to people who didn't work for it. Well, what's the objective morality? Because they're both coming at it from the perspective they're reducing harm. This is the whole question. Of course, most people are going to say whatever their opinion is what's reducing harm or the right thing. The question is, what is the ultimate arbiter of that? Is there anything that exists beyond individual humans, perhaps agreeing with each other in groups, perhaps not, saying that one thing is right or no? I didn't hear anything like that. I heard attacks on the Bible, God killed the Amalekites, God drowned children. Yeah, that may be true, and maybe we should throw the Bible out if that's all true, but you didn't do anything to establish that objective morality exists beyond if there's no God. Nothing. I didn't hear anything like that. Maybe we'll get to that in a future conversation, but I just don't. But again, that being said, I do think the debate was a good one that people should listen to just because of what was discussed, even though it wasn't the original prompt. Anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Again, really subscribe more than anything, because Or if you don't want to subscribe, just, take what you can from this discussion and learn from it and maybe develop your ideas. But anyways, thank you everyone who watched. Thank you everyone who participated. Thank you everyone in the chat. And yeah, anyone who sees this or listens to it or was involved in any way, thank you and God bless. Goodbye.